Welcome to episode number 1 of Manufacturing Mental Health with Marilyn. I'm Marilyn Rosa Green, psychotherapist, executive coach, and former manufacturing HR strategist and consultant. This is the space where we connect the dots between mental health and leadership and why your well-being is the foundation of your success. In today's episode, I want to set the stage for everything this podcast is about, and that starts with asking a big question. Why is mental health the missing piece in leadership? Now, before we dive in, just a quick note. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling with mental health, please reach out to a licensed professional in your area. And remember, listening here does not create a therapist-client relationship. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. So I want to tell you about when I worked in manufacturing as an HR professional. And I saw this over and over again. Leaders who looked all well put together, polished on the outside. They were hitting their numbers, showing up for meetings, and just getting things done. But behind closed doors, they were exhausted, anxious, and completely, and if not completely, very near burnout. And what struck me was how little space there was for them to admit it, for them to show any sign that they needed help, any sign that something was wrong. And if I were to ask them how they were truly feeling, there was a lot of deflection, a lot of denial, maybe even defensiveness and projection. Leadership was about being strong. That's how I saw it. It's about having a very strong authority and just holding it together, just never letting anyone see the cracks, just being able to say yes to everything and just take care of everything and everyone, no matter what, no matter the cost. But those cracks were costing people their health, their relationships. When I say relationships, I mean their marriage, their parenting relationships, their friendships, and everything in between. And I mean, sometimes even their own careers, which is ironic because they're burning themselves out trying to grind and doing all the things. But then at the end of the day, it's just not sustainable and it compromises their leadership effectiveness and their career overall. And so when I was noticing this now in retrospect, I realized that's where I noticed that mental health isn't separate from leadership. It's just the missing piece. We don't think about mental health as a skill for leadership. We think about it as a personal matter, an issue or a focus that has to do with how people feel, their emotions, or even a chronic mental health disorder like depression, anxiety. It's not. It doesn't have to be, and it should not be. Now, I'm not saying that mental health is the answer to everything. Obviously, we need to focus on systems and processes and all these different things. But at the end of the day, the one person responsible for any successes or failures, the person they're going to look for answers is going to be the person in the leadership role. And so when we focus on leadership to be at the center of our business strategy or an organizational strategy, how can this leadership team guide the company to an expansion plan, to any kind of growth or change? And it just comes back to the capability of leadership, their ability to connect with people, to influence their team, to be able to have them bought into this new change that they're implementing, whatever that is, a new software, you're moving from location to location, a new SOP, whatever it is, people look up to leadership for answers, for support, for guidance. And if you as a leader are feeling anxious, really, or just really worried, nervous, if you are trying to hide how nervous you feel about the change and you try to just cope with it when you leave, the office or the factory, wherever you're working, and you deal with it for that 1 hour a day by going out for drinks or ignoring it or whatever it is that you do, the problem is not going to go away. And this issue of leadership, it's not just about being able to show up every day. It's not about being the first one to get there and the last person to leave. What we're going to talk about here in this podcast is about what's going on the inside. What are your thought processes? What emotions are you feeling? If you're able to even recognize what those emotions are, because when we are on autopilot, we're just ignoring and just shoving down our feelings because we need to hit the mark. We need to hit the numbers. Production needs to happen. And then we only have these many seconds, these many minutes. It has to be exactly in coordination and following a process or procedure. And so we do not address, and honestly, not only do we not address, but there's also some fear as to, well, if you've been in leadership for 10, 20 years and you really have not worked on your mental health, you probably are hesitant, just like many of my clients, of even opening up this can of worms. I mean, where do you even start? Is it an issue that's debilitating me? Probably not. And so it's not urgent. Okay, well, if it's not really something I need to fix or work through, then I'm fine. Days go by and you hit a point where you're burnt out because you can't keep going anymore. And so it starts to impact your performance. It starts to impact your confidence. You start to feel shaky because you're exhausted. You're physically and mentally exhausted. You're not as productive as you usually are. And you're just feeling the pressure. You're feeling stress. And I want to tell you that this is a complete myth here, that leadership is about always being strong and never showing emotion. The truth is, leaders are humans. We're all human. And mental health directly impacts decision-making, communication, trust, team building, all of these things. That is the absolute truth, is that mental health is, I would say, the most important thing for anybody. I mean, I'm speaking directly to leadership in an organization, but part of my focus in bringing mental health to executive coaching is that we are looking at personal development. And for you to grow as a person, to be able to grow as a leader, we have to look at mental health. And ignoring mental health will lead to burnout, to turnover, to a toxic culture, to micromanagement. And what we want to do is reach a point where we have authentic leadership, and that starts with inner work. If you are looking to be a transformative leader, a grounded leader, then you're going to have a lot of self-awareness, boundaries, and compassion, self-compassion specifically. You can't think that you have to be perfect all the time. You have to try and reframe that thought, right? That thought that comes in and says, that's not good enough. We need to do more. And you keep pushing your team. But really what you're doing is you're pushing yourself to be the best. And it's never good enough because and I learned this in manufacturing, the process improvement culture is such a great one, and it brings so many benefits to the end result of quality control and safety metrics and all of those things. But it also is a double-edged sword because it puts us in this mindset that we always need to get better, and we forget to slow down, to take a breath and appreciate the work and the small progress and the small wins that we achieve day to day, week by week. But if you implement self-compassion, then it changes everything because you look at yourself and you meet yourself where you're at. It's not about settling for less, but it's about acknowledging the efforts that you've done. And it's about changing the self-judgment to acceptance. Accept yourself for your faults, accept yourself for the mistakes you make. It's okay to be vulnerable with yourself first, to be honest, to have emotional honesty. And when you start to think about your leadership development in terms of how can I grow from the inside, it changes everything because it makes your identity, it changes your perspective of your leadership identity into something much greater than it has been, because it's not just about moving up the ladder. It's about being the best person you can be for your team, for yourself, for your family. And that's fulfilling. That has to be more fulfilling. And I see it over and over again. It's a mission-driven type of leadership. And it's a beautiful shift to see. And if you have been experiencing these thoughts of feeling stuck, disconnected, overwhelmed, and you can't seem to figure out how to get back on track, I want to encourage you to stop and not try to go back to the olden days when you felt perhaps more confident or more aligned. I want you to look at this point in your life as an opportunity to change, as an opportunity to start over, to try something different. Because what you're doing up to this point has not been working. If you've landed here on this podcast at this point of the conversation, I have a feeling that maybe you're struggling a bit and you want a different way of focusing on yourself. And perhaps focusing on mental health feels right. When we pretend that mental health isn't part of leadership, what we're really doing is building on a shaky foundation. A leader's stress affects the entire team. A leader's stress affects their performance. But when a leader prioritizes their own mental health, they model resilience, clarity, and balance. That's what makes leadership sustainable. And when you're able to show up like that with your team, you don't leave that at the door. The whole purpose here is that you are authentic leader. That means that you're you. So when you go home, you bring these set of skills and this work, you bring that with you, that inner work. When I say work, I mean that inner work. You model that resilience, clarity, and balance everywhere you walk, with anybody you interact. I want to leave you with this question. Where in your leadership are you running on empty? Maybe it's in your energy, maybe it's your patience, maybe it's your confidence. Just noticing it's the first step to shifting from autopilot into grounded leadership. Thank you so much for being here with me today in this very first episode of Manufacturing Mental Health with Marilyn. My hope is that you walk away knowing that mental health is not optional, it's essential. And together, we're going to explore how to make that a reality in your own life and career. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep leading with intention.